with us anyways on our live stream. And we would love for you to engage with those folks and engage with each other by tweeting on that hashtag. There's already a bunch of people on there right now as I'm talking about that hashtag. Don't you want to know what they're saying? You should go on Twitter and look. Wow, mystery.
You see why I have her do that? I can never do that. I can never muster up all that energy. Okay. Upcoming events. I'm actually really excited about our upcoming events. January 4th, the Thursday right after the holiday, we have mobile screen reader training. Got an individual, a friend of mine who's in town, visits his family over the holidays. He decided to stick around a few days before heading back to the Washington, D.C. area to help us do mobile screen reader training. He's an expert. Anyone who wants to learn more about the mobile screen readers, whether it be iOS or Android, you definitely want to check out this event. By the way, it's almost at capacity. So if you're interested in attending, you might want to RSVP as you're sitting in those seats right now.
Don't you mean it's almost already at capacity?
It's already almost at capacity.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. Thank you. In February, we're going to wrap up our series. We started a series earlier this year on WCAG 2, covering the 4 different principles. We've gotten halfway through, and then we had speakers better than me show up and happen to be in town. So we're just now getting to where we're going to wrap up with understanding and robust. We're going to cover that. We don't have a date yet, but it'll be the first 2 weeks of February. Followed by later on in the month, we're going to try something different, something we haven't done before. It's called an accessibility clinic. How many of you have ever gone to Walgreens or CVS, gone to their little medical clinic? Raise your hand. Okay, so this is the same thing, but for accessibility. Okay, you're going to come in, we're going to diagnose your problem, and we may offer a prescription. Only because if you guys are coming in with angular, it's like, dude, I'm sorry. you guys are, I'll give you what you should be rendering, but you know, some of the framework options, I can point you to those solutions, but that's about it. Okay, so tonight we have 4 speakers. Now the challenge here is to stay on time, which we're already 6 minutes behind. But this feels familiar to me because I used to work for an airline, so we're rocking it right now. We have Santina Krosner presenting on accessibility embedding media. We have temporary disabilities with Theodore Huff, accessible by default by Melanie Sumner, and DIY YouTube captions with Laura Shields. Teddy, if you want to come on up. And now here's where we're going to do a little swap here. So hopefully everything will go hunky-dory. Do you need the yes, no, the wireless? No. Teddy, I will need you to put on the call. That's for the stream. Yep. Yeah. Let me show you. Nick, I have to take forever to remember his name. Nick, can you check the captions? Make sure. Good? Okay. Cool. So this line will sound good. Okay.
So I'm going to apologize in advance. I like to walk around when I talk, but this cable is probably going to tie me down, so if I fall, no pictures. We'll make it work.
You need a lanyard for that. You know?
Oh, that's true. If I can use that, I will. That's fine.
Well, no, that's for that.
Yeah, that's for stream.
Yep.
Cool. I'm not talking with my hands today. Great. So first off, I'm going to apologize. My voice is a little bit off. I've been talking for 9 out of the last 24 hours for different presentations, so I'm going to apologize coming in. But hi, my name is Teddy. Ignore the Theodore stuff. That's all just social security card stuff. I go by Teddy. I work for Accenture Interactive over at our digital hub on Madison. So I work with the front-end development team, where I'm a manager on the team over in the Chicago office, where we're based. Then we'll have offices in New York, San Francisco, Boise. Plus, we work with our offshore teams. So it's a cool cool experience. Welcome to talk to any of you guys about it afterwards. Talk about what we do. One thing that I'm sure, like all of us have, is our clients really aren't super knowledgeable about web accessibility yet. And I mean, outside of this room, most people aren't super knowledgeable about web accessibility. And some of the first hurdles we've tried to go through are just convincing them that it's worth their investment. And a lot of times they're going to say, it's too much money, it's too hard, or I don't know how to do it, we're not going to try, right? So we can try, and we'll just jump straight in. So we can already go ahead and give them things like hard numbers, or scare them into saying like, hey, well, these people are getting sued over here. And sometimes that's going to work, right? Financial clients can be more receptive, healthcare client more receptive. Smaller firm or somebody that's into consumer goods, maybe they don't care too much yet. They haven't got a really good precedent of people in their peer group getting sued yet. Or they might be fine with not spending the extra time now to hit a potential untapped area of their market. Either way, we can try them, right? Sometimes it works. Now, the other thing we do, and especially with our design firm inside of Accenture, Fjord, I don't know if anyone's worked with Fjord or heard of them in the past, but they're the design arm of Accenture. We have something called like an empathy and inclusion workshop. So we actually bring the clients into our workspace. We talk to them about web accessibility, why it matters, give them some hard numbers, and then we essentially do a little bit of a round robin where we're going to give you a blindfold, your arms tied behind your back, you have this, this, or that, and we try to put people into a situation where they can have a little bit better of an understanding of what people have to go through. And then we have them go through like a standard lunch buffet, right? How can you like hold a plate and scoop food onto it if you only have the use of one arm, or if you have no idea what food is in front of you? And this works for people, right? They start understanding a little bit better about what it might be. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for some people, right? So these are two possible routes that you can go when you're trying to convince your clients or your coworkers, people to really try to get on board with web accessibility. The way I like to do it, and again, before I jump into the next slide, I've been trying to talk through this method for about 1.5 years now. And don't you hate when you have a fantastic idea, and you talk about it internally, and then you find somebody somewhere else is already talking about it, right? It's the worst. I see a couple smiles. So selfish accessibility, right? Adrian Roselli, he put out a huge presentation earlier in July on selfish accessibility. It's been referenced in a few of the meetups here, essentially saying, all right, one of the best ways to help convince people that something matters is to make it relate to them, right? Like you can have empathy, you can understand other people's plight, but what about me? If you tell them like, this affects you, this helps you, this does this, this, and this for you, it's a better understanding for a lot of people, right? Again, there's no right or wrong way to feel, right? As long as you are trying to get to web accessibility somehow, you've got the right answer. It doesn't matter how you approach it, it doesn't matter how you've gotten there, as long as the final destination is you are trying to make a more accessible web. So I don't really like the idea of selfish disability. Because I have a higher level of empathy, I don't like the idea of somebody saying that I'm selfish, right? So I more like to think of, well, what about situational disabilities, or temporary disabilities, or momentary challenges that are going to affect somebody's ability to use my product, and maybe I can use that to help convince my client. Because I also don't want to roll into a client meeting and say, hey, since you guys are selfish, here's why you don't understand accessibility, or here's ways I can apply to your selfish nature, right? It's not going to work for me. Or at least it hasn't in the past. So, nice little fun way I like to call it is grocery bag accessibility. So, defining situational user stories and trying to help people understand why they might want to put some accessible effort in using real world scenarios that anyone can understand, regardless of what their background might be. So today we're going to be focusing on a couple of user stories that are written specifically for mobile development and mobile websites, mostly because there's a lot of interaction points. I can get you in a real world experience where you're on your phone. It's kind of hard to say, well, what if you're on a train with your laptop? Okay, it's going to be a little bit harder to understand it, but we've all taken our phones in places where we probably shouldn't. So we can at least kind of sympathize on that. So one thing before we get into it, one thing where accessibility would legitimately make a huge difference is 49% of users in 2013 said they only use one hand when they use their phone. That number's only gotten larger since the phones have since gotten a little bit bigger, but you might still need to use two hands in some situations for more complex tasks, but that should really not be the norm, right? The norm should be, I should be able to hold something in one hand, I should be able to use it in one hand, right? If I can physically hold it and I can physically carry it around, there's no reason why I should have to bring my other hand in, right? In fact, we can see like even in iOS 11, they're doing more and more for like one-handed mode, like new keyboards where it's easier to type with either the left or the right hand, depending on how you're holding your phone. I mean, I've been holding this for the last 5 or 10 minutes, and I've only almost dropped it twice, so I should be able to at least do everything I need with one hand. Okay, so here's a couple user stories. Now, starting from the top, more of your traditional ADA, accessibility, user story, and getting down to the bottom, right? So as a person with one arm, I need to order a car. Chances are, you're going to hit some people. They're going to understand that this is important, right? Not everybody's going to get it, right? So maybe it's not the best one. And again, I apologize for transitions, but the point of the matter is I'm going to get to the right answer towards the end, right? So as a person with a broken wrist, I need to order a car. My mom has had the terrible misfortune of breaking both her left and her right wrist, fortunately at different times, but I know it's a struggle to do things just on your phone or in the kitchen or just around wherever. So maybe we can consider this. Maybe I can hit more people with this one. Maybe they can better understand it. Well, as a person holding a bag of groceries, I need to order a car, right? Get out of Mariano's, Jewel, Target, wherever you are. You've got a whole bunch of stuff you're trying to carry. It's a real pain in the butt if you have to sit everything down in the snow or in the rain and then try to order a car, right? So now that we're talking about this, we've gotten to a point where we're going to deliver a better accessible product for a user that might only have the ability to use one hand or has limited range of motion. But we're doing it in a way that more people can understand and make sure that this becomes a higher priority target, right? Because again, what I've seen in the past is the first thing people love to strike off of that record is, well, what if we don't make it accessible? Can we save money there? Can we save time there? Can we get this out the door? If I'm forcing this on you in user stories that just make sense for a broader audience, I still get my accessible web. I still get to make a better product for the world, but you understand better why it costs more money. You understand why this needs to happen because you've been in this spot before. So yeah, it's appealing to your selfish nature, but it's a little bit friendlier, right? So I'm going to talk about Uber and Lyft really quick. I just realized no one's actually heard this microphone. Do I really need it?
Yes.
Yes, I do? Okay,
Yes.
great. Never mind. So these are two examples that I have up here. So everyone's used both of these interfaces, or probably at least one of them, right? Show of hand if you've used Uber or Lyft. Excellent. Excellent. So these are two of the exact same location interfaces when I was down in India this weekend trying to capture some screenshots. So one thing to focus on here is, we'll actually go ahead to the next screen. So Scott Herf put out a great study about designing for mobile layouts. And this goes back a couple months to the presentation from Charlene King, who was a former coworker of mine, by the way. So sad to miss her presentation. But she talked about how good design is already accessible. So if we look through here, what we're seeing here, we've got on the screen overlays of heat maps, essentially for which areas of the screen are the hardest to touch. So you see this green area in the bottom left going up towards the center. That's the easiest range of motion for your thumb, right? That's going to be the easiest way to navigate through this page. Everything in the yellow, which is slightly from the bottom left towards the top right, those are areas where you can stretch a little bit, but it doesn't feel too bad. It's almost comfortable. And then everything in the red, which would be your top left of your screen and the bottom right of your screen, those are where it actually hurts to reach, right? It's similar to what we're talking about on a desktop where it's like a push and pull, which corners of the screen are easier to reach to. If I have to throw my mouse away versus trying to drag it back, there's a little bit more effort into it. And especially for someone with lower mobility, these are great things to consider. So here, on the left, you'll see how Lyft does it, right? They've got the ability to select your car in the bottom left. They have the ability to request. Oh, hi.
Oh.
We got the ability to get automatic updates in the bottom right. Got the ability to
this
not
is a Mac.
No, this is an Accenture Mac, you see.
Ah.
So it's a little bit different. Big Brother needs to put more software on my machine. So, anyway, back to this. And then if you look on the right, you'll see how Uber's trying to take it where they're saying, well, you've got these hot destinations that you might want to go to. But if it's not one of those, stretch all the way out of your comfort zone to type in a location, right? And And the other thing on the left, with lift, you can drag around the screen in that bottom left corner and actually pick your location based off of that. You don't need to type anything in. So you can more quickly say like, hey, my pinpoint is right here. Just drag it to where you are on the map. Do any sort of corrections without actually typing anything in. Same with your destination. If you know where you're going on the map, just drag it around. You can do all of that in the bottom left corner of your screen, essentially. So these are a couple of good examples of how you can try to accommodate your user by putting things in that comfortable range for them. Obviously, I have a non-biased opinion, right? I use them both. I feel like Lyft has done a better job because I do have full control over where I'm trying to put my pinpoint, where I'm trying to get my destination, selecting my car. And I mean, again, I'm really irritated that a good percentage of this bottom, like, safe touch area is dedicated to trying to buy an Uber credit card, gift card thing, right? I don't care. Like, that's not what I'm focused on right now. I'm trying to get somewhere, get your advertisements out of my app. So these are good things just to kind of consider where when you're designing your interface, don't put things that are unnecessary to the overall experience in that safest zone for your user. It's going to hurt everybody, but it's certainly hurting folks that can only reach into a certain area comfortable with one hand. So I tried to take these hyperlinks out so they weren't showing up as blue. I apologize. But I will say it is completely unnecessary for this, right? We will go through, they'll be in the deck afterwards. I just wanted to make sure you had access to them. So there is a reason for it. The world's worst chocolate chip cookie recipe is actually just the best chocolate chip cookie you're ever going to have. But it's also a beautiful example of just garbage interface design that is just wonderfully, wonderfully breaking any sort of cognitive ability you might have to really comprehend the recipe, right? So on the screen now is an example of how the recipe is just kind of shrouded around 4 advertisements. Plus, I don't have the cursor in there or the scroll bar in there, but the recipe doesn't start for 65% down the page. You actually have to scroll past 19 advertisements before you get the recipe, mostly because this person is making all their money off of ad views, and I understand that, but they've written this lovely story about how these cookies are so delicious they've ruined their life. I don't care, I want the recipe, right? So it's just a horrible user interaction experience, and then once I get to the final thing I need, if I found any way of keeping my focus and getting all the way down the page, even the recipe itself is convoluted and hard to read. So they also do offer a print version. This is what I would expect. It's very easy to read, very high contrast, it's neat, and it's orderly, and this is what I want on a recipe card. So let's kind of talk through what some user stories on this might be. Well, first, I got a little quote, Alton Brown, celebrity chef, anyone familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not, you are missing out, right? Alton Brown is the best. So he says, according to my calculations, about 30% of dishes prepared from written recipes go wrong because cooks concerned don't actually read said recipe, right? And it's a lot easier to ignore that recipe when it's ads around it, when it's laid out horribly, when it's mixed in with your own, a little bit of a color commentary on why this recipe is amazing. And I know that because I've already struggled to read this a few times. So some user stories from how I've interacted with this. Let's try to pop those up. So first, I can say as a person with low cognitive ability, I need to be able to understand this recipe, right? Somebody that might have any sort of hard time comprehending layout and flow, it's not helping them by putting all these distractions on there. And again, this is going to like resonate with some people, some clients. It's going to help them. So my coworkers in the back there, they know for a fact that this is the recipe that I used in our baking competition a couple weeks ago. If they didn't, the secret's gone now. So as a tired person baking cookies at 11 p.m. the night before an office bake-off, I need to understand this recipe. And it was super hard. I'm sitting there on my iPad that's covered in flour in the kitchen at 11:30, and I'm like, I can't follow this right now. I had to find that print version. It was just too confusing. So you can say, well, you know, what if your user is not paying full attention in the kitchen? You know, like somebody that's actually cooking and trying to make cookies and trying to put together a recipe. Bless you, by the way. Like trying to actually put together a recipe, you're not 100% focused every single second on following these step-by-steps because you're actually doing the steps. So removing some of these cognitive barriers that you're putting in there artificially, it's not just going to help your accessible user, it's going to help everybody. Because again, by making a more accessible product, you're just helping everybody you can. So hopefully I'm giving a couple of examples. And again, since I said before, like Adrian Roselli, he's put so much accessibility out there. It's a great presentation. I highly encourage you to read it and watch through it. So there's a lot more user stories than this available for you. These are just a couple that kind of resonate with me recently. Just more quick examples would be You have a video and you're on a train, you can't listen to it because you don't have headphones, okay? A text alternative would be awesome because I can still understand your product and maybe I want to buy it, but I don't have a headphone so I can't listen to it right now, so I guess I won't. Or having low contrast and being out in the sun on a dim screen, and now I can't see your content because you didn't pay any sort of attention to color contrast. So all these examples are out there, and hopefully you can find this as another way to try to help convince your clients and help convince your coworkers that accessibility does matter. So I have no idea on my time. I figured you would have thrown some at me if I was over, but
Actually, I wasn't going to throw any of my belongings. So you did go over, but that's fine.
That's fine.
Quality's key here.
So,
are there any questions? We really only have time for one question.
but I will be in the back for afterwards, so we don't need to take anything now. Unless there's something that you think is super important for everybody, I can answer quickly. But I can talk, so I can't answer anything quickly. So I will be in the back, though, so just let me know if you have any questions. I will be here.
Okay, time for a swap. Is Santina here? Yeah. Yes, are you ready? Fantastic, okay. We're going to get Santina all set up here and ready to present. But in the meantime, it's time for our first giveaway. So here's how we're going to do this. We have those 4 items. We have multiples of the one. The tablet, we're going to wait till later. We're going to wait till the end. But for now, we're going to ask a question. You're going to answer. I guess I can. Oh, so this way, yeah. It would help if I was on the screen. We're going to ask a question. I'm going to ask my organizers to peer into the audience here to see who raises their hand first. You will answer. If you're right, you get to pick either a web for everyone, accessibility for everyone, or a $25 Amazon gift card. Okay? So here we go with the questions.
I have to build hype, Dennis.
You did, and you're doing a wonderful job. Okay. What does WCAG stand for?
Ooh,
Yes,
ooh, right,
you
right.
in the plum-looking jacket. Hold on one second.
Web content accessibility guidelines.
Bingo!
Woo!
We got a winner. What would you like?
The book apart book.
The book apart, that would be Accessibility for Everyone by Laura Callback.
Please.
Okay? Do me a favor, give me your contact information. I'll have to mail it to you. It's sitting at my house. You'll get it. Okay, great. Thank you. Just so you know.
Oh, it's recorded.
So this is the live stream.
I see.
Just ask that you stay on the screen. This is a microphone for the audience. Hello. But let me take that so I can properly introduce you. Because I forgot to do that with Teddy. You forgot to remind me.
I forgot to make sure you didn't forget.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay, so we're ready for our next presentation by Santina Krosner. Yes. It's late in the day, like I can pronounce my own name. I'm going to try to do better here. Santina is a web developer with over 10 years of experience. Santina uses she, her pronouns. See how difficult this is for me here.
You need a nap.
I know, I need a nap. She's in usability, marketing design, cybersecurity, information systems, and technical writing. By day, she serves as Promnet's Source's lead digital accessibility consultant. In her personal life, she bridges her technical skills with welding, woodworking, sewing, electronic hardware, wiring, and CNC machinery, often terrorizing her partner with continued home IoT automation. Can you tell I'm from a different generation? Everyone, welcome Santina.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, the Internet of Things. Weird that somebody doesn't like a bunch of wires hanging from the ceiling. Anyway, apologies about the order change, but I do appreciate you accommodating. I am obviously, I don't know, maybe not obviously, I am dressed to go to a holiday party, so I'm about to take off too much. I used to be an announcer in a club. Anyway, that good? I'm not screaming. I have one of those long voices too. So Google Maps, let's make it accessible. Hi, I've already been introduced, I'm Santina. Basically all you need to do with the embed code, you just add a title tag to it and boom, suddenly those conformance checkers, you're conformant, so you know, dev out. Mic drop, I'm out. Just kidding. More, but we just did the absolute bare minimum. That's what a lot of developers want to do. They just want to get those checks. I'm here to do more than the bare minimum and delve into those docs, those API docs. So you've been warned if you're not somebody who's a developer, sorry, maybe go grab some coffee or beer or whatever they've got there. So again, I'm Santina, Profit Source is my company. Here's the official information. I didn't want anybody thinking that I was just ditching out for the holiday party. So feel free to tweet at me and check out my company. And you know, we're gonna check out that API, don't deny it. So we would go directly to the JavaScript, and you still need that title tag because that's what we're gonna base everything on. So just to show you what that would look like, we're gonna just put a simple div in there and add the title, obviously whatever would be appropriate to describe the map that you are embedding. For me, it was just a test map. So I included that on my title, and these are the tags that we are actually going to have to add to the web accessibility to get this accessible. This was tested for a screen reader specifically, as well as the keyboard shortcut with VoiceOver. This was not tested with any other kind of technology. So I noticed my own self that Google Maps not super great with screen readers, so this will help to improve that. There's still more to do. So we're going to take a look at, it's got an errant F in there. That's supposed to be label, not label F. I'll correct that before these slides go out. But primarily we need to add these title and label tags, not just to that div, but we also need to get in that API and figure out where we can add them in the actual Google code. So that's when we switch over to the, don't worry, I have another tab open. So this is the code pen. This would also be in the resources that we have available. It's not the code pen. I think I'm having an internet issue. Could you, Christina, would you mind bringing my phone closer? That's okay. I'm not too worried about it. We'll get that code shortly, but what we're going to take a look at if we can, let's see if I have one of the pens open. This is what we were going to look at. So this is a simple, a simple map marker with some description. Ordinarily, you would click on it if you are able to use your mouse, and you would open up this descriptor. So that's pretty common. A lot of the clients, they want to have their location, their map directions, etc. So in order to accommodate that, ensure that the screen reader will indeed read that off, we need to ensure that we have this with the title tag because it does not actually recognize the marker with the API code. It skips right over it. It goes from map to satellite, the Google link, zoom in, zoom out, and that's really not useful. So now that I have my phone somewhere adjacent, hopefully we'll get the code to load up. Do we have internet anywhere here? Here. There we go. So this is what we are more accustomed to taking a look at. So as I said before, this is basically just the same API code with some modifications. So just to point out exactly what the modifications are, again, here's the title. We're just basing it off of this div. Then we go to the actual marker that is buried in the code, but essentially we are going to take a look at the, let's see where it is, it's right. Part of it is here. This actually doesn't work, the alt tag. I just put that in there for fun. That's just to say that this alt tag, where you think it might label Google Maps, does not actually do anything. You can put a title, you can put a label, and it will still not do anything. Here is actually where in the Google API code is where you put that title tag as well as the label tag. So you'll see that I have the Maggie Daily ribbon, the skate ribbon. Never been. It's wonderful. Also, you'll notice that we have label right here. I'm leaving the label blank. This is a hack. I'm going to be frank. The marker will not show without that label there. So you could choose to put in something else. You could choose to put in A. You could choose to put in actual text. That's going to change this little red dot to have A, which is fine. It's just that A doesn't really say anything to a screen reader, and it's just going to read off A. So that's why I chose to leave it blank. This will actually read off via screen reader, Maggie Daily ribbon. So I know if I'm using a screen reader that this particular marker is for Maggie Daily ribbon. So it also, in adding the title tag as well as this blank label, will ensure that it's keyboard accessible as well. So you can click on it by using the keyboard or the voiceover shortcuts. You can actually navigate to it. I'm using my mouse right now. I'm just going to assume that you guys don't want to listen to my screen reader. It goes really fast. But here is the text. All of this, I did customize it specifically for the Maggie Daily ribbon. You can see the example that they have in there for Australia. Really though, the title and the label tag, you're already going way further than Google Maps has taken you. The other things you need to think about is what happens next. So the X, that is also inaccessible. You cannot get to that via keyboard. So those are the kinds of things that, not great, but you're gonna have to write some special JavaScript code to try to overcome that. So just keep that in mind as well. I did want to keep it short because it's a lightning talk, so I wanted to get the absolute most information out there as quickly as possible. So that's the description, the title tag. This ensures that people are actually able to get to it. The plain embed code doesn't really work that well on websites without that title tag. And also, for the most part, at least for the clients that I've serviced, they just have one location and they want their location, title, description, and then they're good to go. So that, in summary, is everything. I do want to mention, like the slide showed, that there are some other things to keep in mind. So, like I said, that closing tag, if you add a focus region, that's going to ensure that you can navigate to it. It's a little bit tricky because it's Google API, so there's some other cruft in there to try to clear out. There's also, my slides go, I have so many tabs open all the time. As you can see, the focus, the alt, tab index, those hopefully are pretty familiar with the folks who are doing development on a regular basis. So that's, it's just going to have to be, you deal with the Google Maps, you work the DOM, you go through there, you find that tiny little X that's super very varied, and then you add a whole bunch of code to it. So that's essentially what you have to do to Google Maps is hack into it. That is pretty much everything. I wanted to keep it very short and sweet. I'm going to have the slide deck for you available. Anybody have any questions?
Crickets. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Try the mic.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
just shush your.
No, actually, either repeat her question or the mic.
Oh, I believe. So do you ever find that clients will request Google Maps customizations that just like break accessibility, that aren't able to be made, and you find yourself fighting it? Or is there a way to make everything accessible with Google Maps?
The question was, do clients ask for customizations that break accessibility? And is there a way to mitigate that, essentially? Yep. Yes and no. Of course, you would have to render the Google Maps API, and then you would render whatever customizations they want on top of that. Hopefully, you would be able to get the accessibility somewhere marrying the two, but with Google, you kind of have to overwrite the code an awful lot. So that might require yet another JavaScript file, and then it's a determination of, you know, the load time, etc. We go as far as we can. Obviously, we want to make it as accessible as possible. Also, keep in mind, adding the title tag, I was kind of flippant about it, but it does then allow the user to access the link to Google Maps. So that should take them directly. That should, you know, if you have all the information that's going to carry through, load that for you in Google Maps. So it is an alternate method. It's obviously not the best method. We obviously want to be as inclusive as possible, while also recognizing that this is third-party code that we would have to actually hack into in order to make that accessible, and what is the cost, how expensive does that code start to become with the rendered tag in the browser.
Thank you very much. Okay. Stay there. Okay, so we're gonna get set up. Melanie, I believe you're up next. But before we do that, the gentleman who won the book, this is gonna sound so self-serving. Can you come up for a second? And are you willing to have your picture taken?
Yes and yes.
Okay, so just so you know, we're trying to take pictures of all the winners. We definitely need to do this one because they asked us to. So if you just hold on for a second. We don't have the book, so I'll have you hold. Okay, you know, we hack things, okay?
I feel like we should applaud him again for winning. Yeah. Yeah.
Bingo. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know you thought this was a book. It's not evil. It's not evil. Okay. So oh yeah. And now we'll do the next giveaway, which I am depending on you like it's
Oh, you don't have a
nobody's
hand. There you go.
business. I know. So I need more hands here. So we're going to do the next giveaway. The question is, as he quickly goes to Google Drive, okay, what is the difference between a screen reader and a screen magnifier?
Oh, it was that one.
Okay, yes?
A screen reader.
Go ahead, just shout it out. We're good.
A screen reader reads things off the screen, and a screen magnifier makes everything larger.
Is that good enough?
Lets you zoom in on things.
Do we want to take the second hand and evaluate the chances? Correct? Or are you stuck doing that? That's good.
That's good.
That's
You
good.
win.
It's good enough.
I think he was getting nervous. I saw a beat of sweat. Yeah. Okay, so your options are a Web for Everyone or an Amazon $25 gift card.
Web for everyone.
Fantastic. Oh,
I'll be your Vanna White.
yeah. I'll tell you what. Yeah. So you get it to me, and then we can take a picture. Hold on. We gotta get a picture. Okay, good. Okay.
Hey, Stephanie, what's the answer you were looking for?
Yes. What answer were you looking for?
Oh, I just wanted to cause suspense and drama.
Oh,
Who
so
was it?
troublemaker.
I was.
Yeah. See? You were more invested in it.
All right. Next up is Melanie Sumner. Melanie is a Vice President of Global Technology and Accessibility, SME, at JP Morgan Chase & Company. I used to work. She's the organizer of the Ember Chicago Meetup and team member of the Ember-A11Y, which is a solution, a tool solution for Ember, correct? Yes. A decorated military veteran, the United States Navy. Melanie loves all Final Fantasy video games. Please give it up for Melanie.
So this talk was supposed to be called Accessible by Default, the layered workflow. And I had one of my friends work with me on it. And he said, well, we don't really have a lot of default yet, do we? So because of this, let me see if this, it's not quite working the way I thought. Okay. I'm just going to call this talk Better Accessibility. Sometimes we can't get the buy-in of everybody on our team to make an accessible product. And as someone who talks to developers, works with developers, am a dev whisperer of sorts, I will listen to all your problems and give you cookies and all those kinds of things. I always hear this. I can't get anyone else to care. And it's such a heavy burden. And this June was my 20th anniversary of learning how to code. And I've learned something. That's not a weight I have to carry. So in this talk, we're going to look at what everybody can do on their own without anybody else's buy-in. When all those pieces come together, and that's a different conversation. How to get that buy-in is a meaningful conversation that we should all be learning how to have. But until we have it, what can we each do on our own? So we covered these in an earlier talk, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Why do we care? Because of the law. Why do we care? Because we've got a small budget or only a few developers. Why do we care? Because inclusive culture is a priority. We've made it a priority. Why do we care? Because the more users we can get, the more money we can make. These are all reasons we care. Accessibility can be hard to get right. There's a lot. How many of you have read the spec all the way through? Like, it took me 5 times reading it through just to understand the types of words they were using. Like, that word doesn't mean what I thought it meant, right? So it feels hard. Accessibility can be really emotional. I've been talking about accessibility for a couple of years now, mostly in the framework developer space. And it gets really heated. Oh, religious wars kind of start to go, and people who need accessibility express the frustration of not being able to do things. And I feel their anger, their frustration, almost a level of rejection or hurt sometimes. Like, why doesn't anybody care? I feel the anger of developers saying, why should I have to care? This is frustrating and hard, and I don't know how to do this, and people are just yelling at me and telling me that I'm doing it wrong all the time. Product managers, why do I only have to care about 5% of my users? Why can't I just care about the 95% and, you know, whatever, move on? It can be really emotional. It's also because it's emotional and we're humans and we have to learn how to express our emotions, it can be really easy to ignore. Or taught to ignore our emotions. So it can be easy to ignore. But it's everybody's responsibility. Every single part of every single team bears some responsibility in making an accessible product. Leadership, content managers, user experience designers, visual designers, developers, and QA. Leadership. Leadership's got to vocalize that accessibility is a priority. They have to come right out and say it. So all of the managing directors, all of the developers, all of the everybody understands we are making this a priority. They've got to write it in the budget. And they have to create an inclusive work environment. Content managers. Clear language. No dark horse techniques like those, yes, I want to save money, or no, I want to pay full price. Shame on them. Like that, like, Consistent phrasing. When we use consistent phrasing, we lower the cognitive burden of our readers or our users. They're going to more easily remember what it is we want them to do when they encounter the same commands for the same actions. And it's really super helpful to us developers if you give us the alt text for the images so we don't have to guess. Because there's nothing worse when you've been writing code all day than to try to write alt text. Like, my brain is not thinking in words, my brain is thinking in code. And those are two very different kinds of things. So if you could give us the alt text, that would be great. User experience designers. Logical workflows. Simplify the experience. I know we're all super special and we all have super complex jobs and nobody gets us really, but please make it simple. I'll think more of you. Make the context and purpose really super clear. Visual designers. Adequate color contrast. Kind of blame Apple for making that light gray on darker gray, a little bit darker gray, so famous. I think that's where we first saw it. And I know people are trying to get better at this, but the color contrast. Before I worked here in Chicago, I worked for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where one of my bosses was visually impaired. He was always using a screen magnifier, so I always had to be able to zoom all the everything, and it had to still work. The other one was colorblind. So betwixt the two, I learned a few important lessons about color contrast. So yes, think about font sizes. Think about what happens when somebody's going to zoom in. And please, for the love of all things holy, stop saying pixel perfect. It is a myth. It's a dream. It doesn't exist. It's great in Photoshop, but it's not real life. With all the devices we have now, there's not a fold. There's no pixel perfect. We love you. We want to make you awesome things. Don't say pixel perfect. You don't want it. Look at the kind of animations you're using. Think about parallel scrolling. Just don't do that ever. Bad designer. And then think about the size of your interactive elements. I've got fat fingers. That's, I want to be able to. It's so frustrating with this tiny screen and you can't really tap and you have to kind of just get your finger just right on the edge of the button for it to actually work. Make it bigger. QA. I think we've all probably experienced QA developers or QA testers who have tested. Nobody would ever try to do that. I've found some of those bugs, and I'm just thinking, they wouldn't. So, study your personas. Think about who you expect to use your application. Test for a keyboard-only user. Everything should be keyboard accessible, with or without a screen reader. Your power users really super love keyboard-only. Like, I remember one developer I worked with, he did not really care about accessibility, but he would always get really mad if everything we did wasn't keyboard accessible, because he liked to go really fast through everything. And he thought that was the fastest way to do it. Different types of color blindness, including ignore colors or high contrast. And then please, 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 please learn the difference between visible focus and screen reader focus. And if you come find me on CodePen, I have a really great, I had to write down because I was really tired of explaining it, thing to understand them. So, developers, you don't need anyone's permission to write accessible code. Not a project manager, not a designer, not your boss. You don't need permission to do that. It's just as much your responsibility as it is to write functional JavaScript or whatever else you happen to write. You don't need permission. I'd also like you to please respect the Holy Trinity: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Mm-hmm. They're all there, they're all parts of the whole, and they're separate for a reason. So please, just like any professional, learn your tools. I'm saying this not in an angry way, but as I'm kind of scolding you a tiny bit as your big sister kind of boy. That's the voice I need. Learn the 38 success criteria. There are way more than 38 things about JavaScript that you have to learn. I know that you can learn the 38 success criteria. I believe in you. Learn how to use screen readers. If you develop on Mac, great, but what about people on Windows? Think about the access to a Windows machine versus how much does a Mac cost versus a Windows PC. Firefox and NVDA are also free. JAWS, a little pricier, works with IE. Okay, if you can, it's nice. It's like having a nicer car, I think. Learn how to write keyboard navigation. And if you really want a challenge, figure out how to do it for French, because they've got like a totally different keyboard in France. I didn't know that until recently. I had to like make it accessible and localize it. So if you want to level up, do that. So I'm a member of the Ember Learning Team and the Ember Accessibility Team. I'm also speaking about accessibility at EmberConf in March in Portland, so you should come see me, that would be awesome. But we have done a lot in this space in Ember, mostly because a lot of the people who use Ember are enterprises. So PlayStation Store, Apple iTunes interface on the web. A lot of banks, Netflix uses it internally. So we're building a lot of kind of the stuff you need in your business to do the heavy lifting. That's what Ember is mostly used for. So we have Ember A11Y. This add-on gives you relevant focus to your application. So it's like an upgrade to skip links. So single page application, it will kind of shrink your focus in as you navigate through the experience, through your routes. The testing is built on Xcore, so you can get your syntax errors in the browser or in your CLI before you even push any of your code to a commit, which is pretty useful. We also have worked on our template linter, which will check your style guide, your styles, and make sure that you've actually followed your own rules. We have a landmarks add-on, which will, so in a single page application, you know, like the header and the main and the footer, you typically don't, if you use header and footer, you don't have to put the roles on those. But in a single page application, they're not direct descendant of the body. They're wrapped in a div, right? So you have to add the roles. We just made an add-on. It's kind of Ember way to make an add-on to make it easier, then you don't have to remember. Also, this is a very cool add-on. It's very recent. Ember Component Helper. This add-on allows you to add HTML attributes to any existing component. Like, I'll say, ARIA labeled by, or ARIA described by, meaning we've made it easier for add-on developers. You don't have to add all this extra stuff to your add-on. We just gave you another add-on. You can do it for all of them. This has been the most useful add-on at work. I support 30 to 40 teams who use our UI add-on. Empowering them, empowering other people at your place of business to make accessible code more easily. Totally cool, you should try it sometime. And that's all I have. So I'm especially good at accessibility in Windows or in the enterprise environment. So if you ever have any questions, the fastest way to ask me is to tweet at me, because I love Twitter, despite the Nazis. I'm sorry. I haven't found a good alternative yet. So thank you.
Alrighty. While you were inspiring me, there was literally 3 times I wanted to interrupt you with like cheerleading over here, but I said no, not like the last time. I'm not going to do that anymore. But I did come up with the next giveaway question, and some of you who are passionate about accessibility and coding, this will ring near and dear to your heart. While we're doing this, Laura, we can go ahead and get you hooked up so we can move expeditiously. The question is, which is the accurate term? Drum roll. Thigh roll. Alt, tag, or alt attribute? Yes, alt attribute. You have the option of a web for everyone or an Amazon gift card. Okay. Then we got to get a picture.
You want me to grab it?
Here. The microphone. Yeah, you can see it. I got this. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this will give me a chance to get my introduction up.
Yep.
All right, so next up, our final speaker is Laura Shields. Laura Shields is a front-end engineer and accessibility advocate at this place you might have heard of. It's called The Nerdery. It's right here. Welcome, Laura.
Hopefully that works okay. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. I'm also going to apologize for my voice tonight. I'm a little under the weather, but I didn't want to ditch you guys because I know how excited you are to learn about captioning YouTube. All right. So I know we're going over on time too, and I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. Okay. So overview of what we're going to talk about. Who I am. Dennis just introduced me. We can talk more if you have questions about that afterward. We're going to go through this quick slides and an actual demo in YouTube of adding captions in the YouTube interface. And then my last part of the overview is, do you want to be a walrus? So that question is in there because the video that we're going to caption is called Do You Want to Be a Walrus? It's a video that some friends and I made a few years ago. It's basically a music video parody of Do You Want to Build a Snowman? 'Tis the season, if you guys know the movie Frozen. But yeah, with this video, we'll just cover like 30 seconds of it. So don't worry, we're not going to go through the whole thing. You can watch the whole thing later if you want. All right. So YouTube has got a few different ways of adding captions and transcripts, which we'll talk about a little bit too. But there are varying levels of effort involved and accuracy for each of these ways. So if you want to go real easy and do literally nothing, just let it auto-generate captions for you. Now, this does come with some drawbacks, which we'll look at in a second. But it's actually not too bad in terms of accuracy. It's going to get a lot of the words just like, if you were speaking into a voice translator. It's not going to, or Siri, it's not going to catch everything, but it does a pretty good job, actually. So that's a nice, easy way, and in fact, Google does it for you automatically. You don't have to turn it on or anything. They just say, you know what, we're going to give you captions. So some of the drawbacks with this, auto-generated, obviously we mentioned some translation errors. You're going to have some punctuation issues where it doesn't necessarily know starting and ending of sentences and things. Sound cues, right? So when you have music playing in the background or like clicking noise, footsteps approaching, that kind of thing where it's not a spoken word, but it is a sound cue that should be in there. Google or YouTube isn't really gonna do those for you. So that's missing. And then timing errors, sometimes it's not quite exactly where you want it to be. All right, transcribe and auto-sync. So this requires a little effort on your part, but it's the next easiest way besides doing nothing. And we'll demo that, but basically you type in the words, and then Google will try to figure out where those words go for you. So you don't have to sit there and try to like time it perfectly yourself. You just either copy and paste everything in from somewhere else, or you can type it as you go. But it's a pretty easy option, and it will give you even more accuracy because you're manually editing as you go. Some of the drawbacks with that option, it resolves most of the issues that we just mentioned from auto captioning, but you might still have timing errors because it's trying to set the timing for you and figure that out without your help. Okay, so next best option, which requires a little bit more effort, is creating new subtitles or closed captions. And it is a little more effort than the transcribing one we just looked at because it does give you the option to like set specific time code, but it's going to be super accurate because of that. So with this, there really aren't any of those previous issues that we saw. That kind of resolves everything. It's like a more manual process. And then the last way that they offer is uploading a file, which I put at full effort, but it depends on your level of efficiency. So, and full accuracy as well, because this is generally done with some kind of desktop software that is not done in the YouTube interface. You get some sort of program that you can write a text, different types of subtitle files or caption files in. It could potentially be plain text, but you have to know how to format it properly. There's a little bit of a learning curve. So that's a good option, and maybe, it would be great if you're already familiar or done in bulk or whatever, but it is an option that they give you. All right, so let's take a quick look at the demo here. All right, so here is the video, Do You Want to Be a Walrus? And like I said, I'm going to play, the first 40 seconds is there are no words, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to start around 40. And then let's just make this bigger for a second. So I'm actually going to go ahead for this demo and turn on the auto captioning that YouTube has already given me. So this is what it picked up. This is just what it made for me without any help at all. Let's play that. Here.
You'll always walk around with giant teeth. You have flippers and a flattened tail, swimming here and there all over in the sea. You get to spend the whole day eating clams and fish. What could be better than this? Don't you want to be a walrus? I really wish I was a walrus.
All right, so it's my friend Nick, he's a character. So if you notice, it did a pretty good job of coming up with those words, but we have things like, do you want to be a wall? That's not exactly the intent of the song. Walk around with giant E. Well, actually that's supposed to be teeth, so a few little errors here and there. So again, no effort, pretty awesome. There it is. But let's put a little bit of effort with that auto-sync way. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm the owner of this video, I can edit it. This won't be there for videos that you haven't uploaded yourself. And in that case, maybe you're going to do the upload a file option for somebody else if you're not the owner of the video. But here we're seeing how to do it as the owner in the YouTube interface. Here. Okay, so across the top here, we've got a few tabs, and one of them is subtitles, closed caption. I'm going to click on that. And here it shows me a little preview of the video, and then over on the right side, it tells me that there have already been English captions published automatic or those auto-generated ones it did for me. So I would have the option of, say, removing those if I didn't want to, but that's what it's already published. And then I'm going to go ahead and click this Add New Subtitles or CC. You can search for different languages. Like Melanie said, if you want to, level up in some other languages, there's that option. But we'll just go with English. And it gives me a warning, I'm going to overwrite what you already have. It's only going to use one set of captions at a time. So I'll say OK. And now here's those options that we mentioned before. You've got uploading a file, transcribe, and auto-sync, and then creating new from scratch, basically. So let's transcribe and auto-sync, which is the next easiest, quickest way to do it. And as I watch my video, I can go ahead and type things in. So if I go back to that 40-second mark,
Do you want to be a walrus?
so I'm going to start to type that in with one hand. I won't point out. And notice YouTube actually has this cool option where you can, it just auto pauses for you while you're typing. So that's kind of nice because otherwise you would have to be rewinding it constantly. You can turn that feature off right here if you don't want it. But you go ahead and you add all of your stuff in. Literally just copy and paste the whole entire video right here, or type it in right here. I'll finish my sentence here. All right, so, oh, wall grease. There we go. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell it, oh, I'm done, I did the whole thing. I didn't in this case, but we just wanna see what it does. So it tells you it's busy setting timings right now. It's trying to figure out where everything matches up for me. And it's probably not gonna get too far. So let's see if it was able to do that already. All right, I'm gonna hit play. And then let's skip a little bit to 40 seconds. Oh, okay. So this time it did something different when I was practicing it. This time it did recognize that he says, do you want to be a walrus? But it did pick up the one at 40 seconds. He says it a lot. So it did pick up this one way over here, which apparently he says for a long time, according to this auto syncing. So not bad. I mean, he does probably say it there. We can play it to see, but not exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, it actually didn't even pick it up that time. You probably need a little more words in there to do a better job. But all right, so transcribe and auto sync didn't do too much for us here, but you can, as you can see, it's easier to make it more correct here. All right, let's delete that draft. Let's go to creating new from scratch. We'll choose English again for this purpose. Now, I said from scratch because you can do it from scratch. However, if you notice here on the left side, all of these captions are the auto-generated captions that YouTube made for me. So I could just start with those as a starting point. And again, it was pretty good, so maybe I'll just correct the errors. Maybe I'll just say, walk around with giant teeth. Do you want to be a walrus instead of a wall? So you can go through and just make minor adjustments to what they've already given you. That could save you some time as well. Or you could just delete all of that. You could delete it all at once, or you could delete individual chunks at a time. There's a little X button on each one. You can add more little caption bits in between. It really gives you an option. And you can even, if you look down here where the visual representation of where the caption takes place in the video, you can even drag that longer or shorter. So it gives you several options to work with there. So that's the most accurate and pretty easy way to do it is just to hop in here, make some edits, or type it in from there, and know that it's totally accurate. And then that upload a file, go back, draft. So that upload a file method, I'm actually just going to show you guys an example. This is from the YouTube health guidelines, which I have a link in the slides, but they give you kind of a little example of how you would format, let's see if I can make that bigger, how you would format a transcript file. There are different ways to do it, I think, depending on the file format that you're using, but you would do that in your plain text or your SRT or whatever it is, and then upload it via that upload button that we saw over here. If I add new, choose my language, upload a file, and then it'll ask you a few more questions and get the file uploaded. So that's, again, maybe that's a way you would do it if you have people doing transcriptions or subtitles for you. So maybe those people are not the owner of the video, but they want to help out because you have a YouTube channel or whatever. And so they send you their language in the correct file format, and then you just upload it. So there's that method. And then let me go back here for my slides real quick. So yeah, pretty much that is, oh, one more thing actually I want to show you. So I mentioned captions, and I mentioned transcriptions. Transcriptions are a little different than captions. Captions are live. They show up live as a piece of video or audio is playing, like synced with the timing. But transcripts are generally just that flat file information, just a big long thing of text summarizing, like, basically just showing everything that happened, but not associated with the media itself necessarily. So the way that YouTube shows the transcriptions, it actually uses the captions to do that, because why not reuse it if you already have it, right? So I'm going to go to the video itself on the public side. And on the YouTube video, underneath the menu, there's like little like, unlike, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the 3 dots. And the 3 dots menu or button allows you to open transcript. And here on the right side now is all of my captions that have been either automatically generated or I've entered or whatever. They're all there. I can even toggle the time code off if I don't want to see that or hear that, whatever. So that's how YouTube chooses to display transcriptions. So it's not necessarily a separate thing than captions. Although you could, if you wanted to, just copy and paste all that text into the description of the video itself. And that would be another way to have a transcription available right there on the page. But yeah, that's pretty easy. So I encourage you guys to do it or try it. If you like a YouTube show and they don't have captions and you want to help them, or if you have your own, you can do it all right in the interface without having to pay anyone or do anything. So that's the conclusion to my presentation. Do you guys have any questions? I know we probably don't have too much time.
Got one over there?
Yes.
Well, I'm visually impaired, so I couldn't see him.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the quite capability on YouTube to making something called open caption. Do you have the ability on YouTube to make it audio described?
I believe they would just use the same system. Typically, if people have an audio-only video playing, they just have like a blank or a logo or whatever on the video. Oh, you're saying audio descriptions like spoken out loud?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, for
me.
for YouTube, they don't support like a separate track for audio description. So basically, the author of the video would have to create another version of the video with that audio description. There's actual accessible video players that can handle multiple tracks, but the YouTube player does not offer that. Yeah. Yeah, it's been mentioned to them. So.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
any other questions? Yes.
I think we talked about other languages and like selecting English for just about every step, except the very first one, which is automatically getting the words. Does YouTube have that capability like for other languages other than English?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about the other languages options. I was just learning how to do this myself recently, but I believe it does work for some of them. So yeah. That would be a good thing to look up though, because I don't want to claim to know that for sure.
If you have a separate language for the captions, you would upload it like you do, because you can select which language, and then in the player, when you select captions, it will have a list of which captions you wish to select from.
Yeah, I was speaking to like the automatically generated captions. I believe it can do some of them, but I'm not sure to what extent. But yes, you can have multiple language tracks of different languages. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were editing the auto-generated captions, can you save that version, updated version? Does that version appear when you click on the auto-generated option when you're replaying the video, or does it appear when you select closed captioning in the language that it's in?
So the question is, when you overwrite the auto-generated, does it keep the auto-generated, or
is it presented back when playing the video back again with the auto-generated setting, or does it play the edited version only when you select your language closed caption setting?
It will basically, let me see if I can show it. In the interface there, if I started to create a new one, or if I had a different one, I'm just gonna type in random garbage there to have something. Okay, so see how there is it shows me what is published and what is drafts. And so like, again, for a single language, it will, whatever version you've created, it will replace the version, the published version. There can only be one version published at a time for that language. So it will replace it, if you edited the auto-generated, it will replace it for published.
Yeah, I'm still confused.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry.
So when you play the video
Yes.
by itself,
Just like
when
with
you
the
just play
closed
the video,
captions.
you have a closed captioning option, right? Click on it, I'm going to say auto-generated English, or maybe there would be a specific one for English without the auto-generated in the list, right? But so right now you have auto-generated, right? And that's the only script you have, right? So if you go in there and let's say you go in there and you edit it, right? Will it be listed again as auto-generated, or will it be listed separately as English?
It will be listed. It'll still be listed as like English automatic.
Auto-generated.
Yeah, automatic and auto-generated are the same here. Yeah. But then, yeah, if you have other versions like this that you've like added yourself manually, then those would be, it would show up in this list, but only one can be published. So hopefully that answers. We can do a little thing afterward. I don't want to.
Whatever you're updating, if it's the auto-generated one, whatever you're updating will appear under the auto-generated mode. Select it.
Yeah, any of the active captions that you have will appear in the player as one of the options.
Like
so you can have multiple, you know, the auto-generated, your custom one that you created from scratch, those would all appear.
Because I've seen listing videos that have say auto-generated English and then the English.
I see.
And so you have two different versions.
Oh,
and so when you're starting out with the auto-generated version, you've got some raw material to work with that you're editing to come up with this version. When you save that version, if you don't have a separate English only, standard English only version, then I guess you're left with auto-generated titles still. Is that right?
You can turn any of them off. Like.
Yeah, I know for myself. So for this meetup, for the recordings, like that one right there, I will actually, so auto-generated will be out there until I replace it with the custom ones. When I replace it with the custom ones, I, as the author, will actually turn off the auto-generated. I'll remove that option because, you know, one's accurate, the other one's not. So I don't need the inaccurate one. So I'll actually remove it. Now, there may be cases where you do want multiple options, but I would think they would be based on language translations and not, you know, one's proper English, one's British English, and you know, whatever. You know, one's in a British accent. I don't see that. You know, British spelling, right? You get S's instead of Z. You know. Thank you very much, Laura. All righty.